Okay, so the thing to remember is that any root is actually just an exponent, and it's just an exponent in the form of a fraction. So the rule is that if you have some root of some number, this is the same thing as just 1 over n. So if you have the cube root, well, that's really x to the 1/3. If you have the 16th root, well, that's just x to the 1 over 16. So it doesn't matter what your root is. It's really just a fractional exponent. I could have the 25th root, any root. It's really just a fractional exponent. You can write it in that form, and it is equivalent, okay? So sometimes you have a power on whatever's underneath your root symbol as well. So what if we have something like the nth root of some number to some power? Well, you keep that little power and you just put your fraction underneath it. Okay. And when I work some examples, I'll show you like actually why. So you can, sometimes we go backwards. You can put this back as a root, but this is also equivalent. So I could take the nth root of x to the power of m. So I don't know if you're doing formative, it may need to be in a certain way, but those are kind of like your formulas for you to go off of to go, oh, okay, all of those things are equivalent. Okay, let me work some examples so it kind of sticks better when you work some examples. So these are examples off of the formative. So for this one right here, this is how I like to work these problems. This is just my preference. So I like to go, okay, this is, see if there's no number here in this spot right here, then that means that it's automatically default square root. That's the only root that we don't write the number on. If there's no number in front of your root symbol, it's square root. So this is really whatever this stuff is here. I just like to write my stuff. It's all that stuff underneath the root symbol to the 1/2. And then I like to simplify from there. I go, okay, so this is just simple. This is like algebra 1, just simplifying your exponents. Remember, if you have power to a power, then you just multiply your powers. Oh, okay, so this is x. 3 times 1/2 is 3/2. And I go to my y. Well, what power is really sitting on my y right there? Remember, it's really a 1. Okay, so that's 1 times 1/2. So now that's 1/2, and that's your simplified. Sometimes you can simplify your fractions, your powers, your fractions. But if you can't, you just leave it and you circle it. Okay, so then I go over here to number 2. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do the same thing. I have stuff. I'm just gonna write my stuff. A squared, b to the 4th. That's all my stuff. All that stuff, we'll see that's a cube root, so that's really to the power of 1/3. And then I go back and I'm in algebra 1 again. And I'm like, okay, I've got a power raised to a power. So I'm gonna, distribute. We've called it that sometimes. I'm gonna multiply my powers. So that is really A, well, 2 times 1/3, 2/3. B, 4 times 1/3, 4/3. C, 5 times 1/3, it's 5/3. There's your simplified. Okay, so I'm going to go over here. Number 4, here's another example. Again, these are all in the formative. These are the numbers they are on formative. Okay, so I've got stuff. I got a bunch of stuff underneath there. I'm going to write my stuff. X plus y squared. All that stuff is now, whoops, that was wrong. To the 1/5, excuse me. All that stuff is raised to the 1/5 power. Okay, I still have power right here raised to another power. So I'm going to multiply those powers. So I have x plus y, 2 to the 1 times 1/5 is 2/5. Now, I can't really do anything else with this. I mean, you could technically, like, if you wanted to fold that out, but that's not the point of this exercise. The point is just for you to simplify those powers. Okay. Now, number 9 is on your formative, and it's where you're asked to go backwards. So you have to think, okay, now I'm going backwards. I can put this back with a root symbol. So I look at it and I go, okay, what do these powers have in common here? So it looks to me like they're both are, I could write it like this. Whoops. I don't know what's wrong with me. U 2 times a 1/3, right? Times W 5 times a 1/3. Well, if I do that, then I go, okay, that's the same thing as U squared, W to the 5th. All that was raised to the 1/3 power. I'm kind of like factoring out that 1/3 power that was distributed when we had a power to a power. Now I'm bringing it back out. And I go, okay, well, the 1/3, that's the same thing as a cube root. So I have my stuff under my cube root. Okay. This one right here is a little trickier because you have this fraction, but it's the same thing. I'm going to go start rewriting it. First of all, I'm going to say, okay, I'm seeing the 1/4 on the B and then the 5/4 on the C. So I'm thinking I kind of need to, that's probably the direction I need to go. I need to make everything have a power of like a 4th. So I know, well, I can say B to the 1/4. So it would just be 1 times 1/4. And I've got my C, well, I can do 5 times 1/4. And so I've got to get this A to have some number times 1/4. And so I got to think, well, okay, I've got to break this down so that it has a 1/4 on it. That still looks messy, but so what simplifies basically 3/2 so that it says it's a 1/4. What is that? I can't even think right now. So what can I multiply that by? Because you basically have simplified something out. So I could rewrite, I'm going to do it in steps so that we can see it. Is it true that 6/4 is the same as 3/2? Yes. Okay, so now I can break this down even further. This is A, 6 times 1/4 times B, I got my 1 times my 1/4, and then C, 5 times my 1/4. Oh, well, look, I can bring out a 1/4. If I write it like this, A to the 6th, B, C to the 5th, all of this raised to the 1/4. Because remember, even when we had like a fraction that was raised to a power, you still could distribute this powers to all of those. So then I go, okay, then that is really the 4th root of A to the 6th, B, or C to the 5th. Okay, so take it step by step. Anyway, that's the way I like to work them. Everybody has a different thing, but especially these up here, I like to think of, okay, I got stuff to a power, and then I go through and simplify my powers out. Hope that helps.